The transport ship dropped out of hyperspace with a gentle hum that barely registered through the hull. Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck, watching the massive space station grow larger in the viewport. The Galactic Council's diplomatic hub stretched for miles in every direction, its gleaming metal surface dotted with docking bays and communication arrays. Ships from dozens of different worlds moved in careful patterns around the station like insects around a bright light. Jake adjusted his dark blue diplomatic uniform and checked his watch. The meeting was scheduled to begin in 2 hours, which gave him time to review the files one more time. At 42 years old, he had been handling interspecies negotiations for 15 years. His brown hair was starting to show gray at the temples, and the lines around his green eyes spoke of countless hours spent reading alien body language and cultural cues. "Ambassador, we're cleared for Docking Bay 7, called Lisa Carter from the pilot station." The young woman had served as his communications officer for 3 years now. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her fingers moved quickly across the control panels as she guided their ship toward the station. "Thank you, Lisa. Any word from Ben about the security arrangements?" Jake asked, still watching the station grow larger. "He's already aboard reviewing the meeting chamber. Says everything looks standard," Lisa replied. Ben Hughes had been Jake's security advisor for 5 years. The man was built like a wall and had an eye for trouble that had kept them all safe on more than one occasion. Their ship, the New Horizon, was nothing special to look at. It was a standard diplomatic transport, painted white with blue markings. That identified it as an official human government vessel. Inside, it carried the most advanced communication and defense systems that human technology could provide, though most visitors would never know it. The docking procedure took 20 minutes. Jake spent the time reading through the briefing materials about the Zephyrians one more time. The warrior race had requested this meeting to discuss what they called territorial issues in the Outer Rim. In reality, they wanted the humans to abandon 3 colony worlds that blocked Zephyrian expansion into that sector of space. The Zephyrians were impressive creatures by any standard. They stood nearly 8 feet tall on average, with thick skin that looked like natural armor. Each of them had 6 arms that ended in claws sharp enough to cut through metal. Their culture was built around concepts of strength and conquest. They had taken control of 17 star systems in the past 10 years, usually by making demands backed up by superior firepower. Jake had dealt with warrior cultures before. The key was to show respect for their strength while making it clear that humans were not easy prey. It was a delicate balance that required patience and careful word choice. One wrong move could turn a negotiation into a battle. The airlock cycled, open with a soft hiss. Jake stepped onto the station, followed by Lisa and Ben. The corridor was wide enough for several different species to pass each other comfortably. The walls were a neutral gray color that would not offend any known alien sensibilities. Soft lighting provided visibility without being too bright for species with sensitive eyes. A small floating robot approached them. Its metallic voice spoke in perfect English. "Ambassador Morrison, please follow me to Conference Chamber Alpha. Your counterparts have already arrived." They walked through several corridors lined with observation windows that looked out into space. Jake could see other ships arriving and departing from the station. Trade vessels mixed with military escorts and diplomatic transports from across the known galaxy. The station served as neutral ground where species that might be at war elsewhere could meet safely. Conference Chamber Alpha was a large room with a circular table at its center. The table was made of some dark material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Around the table were chairs designed to accommodate different body types and sizes. Large screens on the walls could display star charts and other information as needed. The Zephyrian delegation was already seated on the far side of the table. War Commander Vextal dominated the group like a mountain among hills. His armor-like skin was darker than the others, marked with scars that told of many battles. His 6 arms rested on the table in a display that was probably meant to look casual but came across as threatening. 2 other Zephyrians flanked him. One wore the markings of a military advisor while the other appeared to be some kind of record keeper. All 3 watched the humans enter with eyes that showed no emotion beyond cold calculation. War Commander Vextal, Jake said with a slight bow that showed respect without submission. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us today. I hope we can find a solution that benefits both our peoples. Vextal's response was a grunt that might have been acknowledgement. He gestured toward the chairs across from his delegation with one of his middle arms. Sit, human. We have much to discuss and little time to waste on pleasantries. Jake took his seat with Lisa on his right and Ben on his left. The security advisor's eyes were already scanning the room, noting exits and potential threats with the automatic awareness of someone who had spent years keeping diplomats alive in dangerous situations. The matter before us is simple, Vextal began without preamble. 3 worlds in the outer rim block our natural expansion. Your colonies on these worlds are small and weak. Remove them, and we will have no further disputes. Jake activated his tablet and brought up star charts showing the contested systems. New Boston, Green Valley, and Hope's End were indeed small colonies with populations under 50,000 each. But they were also strategic locations that controlled important shipping routes and contained valuable mineral deposits. I understand your position, War Commander, Jake replied calmly. However, these colonies were established legally under Galactic Council regulations. The colonists have built homes and lives on these worlds. Simply abandoning them is not an option we can consider. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Vextal's 6 arms shifted position, and his scarred face twisted into what might have been a smile on a human, but looked distinctly predatory on a Zephyrian. Perhaps you do not understand the situation, Ambassador. The Zephyrian Empire has claimed those systems. Your presence there is an obstacle to our rightful expansion. Remove the obstacle, or we will remove it for you. Other alien delegates around the edges of the chamber began to shift nervously. This kind of direct threat during diplomatic negotiations was unusual even by Galactic Council standards. Jake felt Lisa tense beside him, and Ben's hand moved slightly closer to his jacket. War Commander, I believe there may be room for compromise, Jake said, his voice remaining steady despite the obvious threat. Perhaps we could discuss mineral rights sharing or joint development projects that would benefit both species. Vextal stood up, his full 8-foot frame towering over the table. The other Zephyrians rose with him, creating an impressive display of alien power and intimidation. You speak of compromise as if you have something to offer besides weakness. Your species is young and soft. You have no great fleets, no warrior tradition, no understanding of true strength. Jake remained seated, but his posture straightened slightly. Years of diplomatic training told him that this moment was critical. How he responded now would determine whether this meeting ended in agreement or something much worse. Respectfully, War Commander, I think you may have some misconceptions about human nature, Jake said quietly. We do prefer peaceful solutions to conflicts, but that preference should not be mistaken for inability to handle other types of resolution. The alien warrior's laugh was like grinding metal. Empty words from a species that has never faced real adversity. Your colonies exist because no one has bothered to take them from you. That situation can change very quickly. Without warning, Vextal's primary right arm swept across the table in a backhanded strike that caught Jake across the left side of his face. The blow was powerful enough to send the human ambassador stumbling backward, blood immediately beginning to flow from his split lip. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the soft hum of the station's life support system seemed to pause. Every alien delegate in the room turned to stare at the unprecedented breach of diplomatic protocol. Striking an ambassador during negotiations was not just an insult. It was essentially a declaration of war. Jake straightened slowly, using the back of his hand to wipe blood from his mouth. When he looked up at Vextal, something had changed in his expression. The patient diplomat was still there, but now there was something else as well. Something that made several of the watching aliens take an unconscious step backward. Jake Morrison touched his split lip with the back of his hand and examined the blood on his fingers. The silence in the conference chamber stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Every alien delegate present had stopped breathing, waiting to see how the human diplomat would respond to such an unprecedented insult. Instead of anger or fear, Jake's face showed something that made the watching aliens deeply uncomfortable. His green eyes had gone cold and calculating, like a predator, studying prey. He rolled his shoulders in a way that produced a soft mechanical whirring sound that definitely did not come from human bones. "War Commander Vextal," Jake said quietly, his voice carrying an undertone that sent shivers through several of the smaller alien delegates. "I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding here today." The Zephyrian commander laughed, the sound like grinding metal plates. "What misunderstanding, soft human? You understand now that your species means nothing to true warriors." Jake nodded slowly as if considering this statement seriously. "You are partially correct. We humans do prefer peaceful solutions to conflicts. We genuinely believe that negotiation and compromise serve everyone's interests better than violence." He paused, wiping more blood from his lip. "However, you have made a critical error in your assessment of our capabilities." Ben Hughes shifted, slightly in his chair, his jacket falling open just enough to reveal equipment that looked nothing like standard diplomatic gear. Lisa Carter's hand moved to the small device at her collar, her fingers finding hidden controls with practiced ease. "You see, War Commander, every human who serves in our diplomatic corps carries a very specific classification within our military structure," Jake continued, his tone becoming matter-of-fact in a way that somehow seemed more threatening than any shout. "What you have failed to understand is that human ambassadors are not simply negotiators sent to talk." Vextal's confidence wavered slightly as he noticed the subtle changes taking place around the table. Jake's posture had shifted almost imperceptibly, his weight now balanced differently. Ben had positioned himself where he could see all the exits clearly, and Lisa's fingers were moving across controls that none of the aliens could identify. "We are weapons," Jake said simply. "Specifically designed, trained, and deployed weapons." The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. Several of the watching delegates took involuntary steps backward. The Zephyrian military advisor leaned forward to whisper something urgent in Vextal's ear, but the war commander waved him away with two of his arms. "Impossible," Vextal growled, though his voice lacked the certainty it had carried moments before. "Your species has no warrior tradition. You avoid conflict whenever possible." Jake smiled, and the expression was nothing like the pleasant diplomatic smile he had worn throughout the earlier negotiations. This smile belonged to something dangerous that had been patiently hiding behind a mask of civilization. "Every human ambassador is a retired Special Forces operative," Jake explained, his voice taking on the tone of someone giving a lecture to students. "We are selected not just for our diplomatic skills, but for our ability to end conflicts when diplomacy fails." Lisa spoke for the first time since entering the chamber, her voice carrying the same deadly calm as Jake's. "Ambassador Morrison has successfully resolved 43 potential military conflicts during his 15-year career. 38 of those were resolved through successful negotiation. Counselor Ithak, a serpentine delegate from the outer systems, found his voice." "And the other 5 conflicts?" Jake's smile widened slightly. "Those required more direct methods of resolution." Ben stood up slowly, his movement causing his jacket to fall completely open. The equipment visible underneath was clearly not standard diplomatic gear. Strange devices that looked like weapons were arranged alongside items that might have been sensors or communication equipment. Everything was compact and efficient, designed for someone who might need to fight his way out of a diplomatic meeting. "Human ambassadors receive Class 7 combat enhancement packages," Ben said in a voice that brooked no argument. "Neural processing boosters, reaction time accelerators, tactical analysis implants, and integrated weapon systems capable of neutralizing entire fleets if the situation requires it." The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled delegates. The peaceful humans, known throughout the galaxy for their reasonable nature and successful diplomatic record, were actually walking weapons of unprecedented capability. Vextal's warrior instincts finally activated, but instead of triggering an attack response, they screamed warnings about immediate danger. He was beginning to understand that he had not insulted a weak diplomat. He had struck a predator that had been patiently trying to avoid violence. "The human approach to galactic politics is quite straightforward," Jake continued, beginning to walk slowly around the conference table, Every alien in the room found themselves tracking his movement automatically. We send our most dangerous individuals to negotiate peaceful solutions to conflicts. If they succeed in finding diplomatic resolution, then everyone benefits from the outcome. He paused directly across from Vextal, his hands clasped behind his back in a deceptively casual pose. If they fail to achieve diplomatic resolution, then the problem tends to resolve itself through other means. The implications of his words settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. The humans had not been sending diplomats to negotiate from weakness. They had been sending weapons disguised as diplomats to offer their enemies one last chance to choose peace over destruction. "You expect us to believe," Vextal said, his voice missing most of its earlier arrogance, "that one human, even an enhanced one, could pose a serious threat to a Zephyrian battle fleet?" Jake exchanged meaningful glances with Lisa and Ben. All three humans shared an expression that the aliens found deeply unsettling. "War Commander, I should clarify something important about my background," Jake said, returning to his seat but somehow managing to look more dangerous sitting down than he had standing up. "When I said I was retired Special Forces, I may not have been completely specific about exactly what kind of Special Forces unit I served with." He touched a control on his wrist, and suddenly the air around him filled with holographic displays. Star charts, fleet positions, technical specifications, and tactical analyses scrolled through the air faster than most of the alien delegates could follow. The data appeared to be updating in real time, showing current positions of ships throughout the sector. "I was part of the Human Strategic Response Division," Jake said as the holographic information continued flowing around him. "We specialized in what our military commanders called impossible problems. Situations where conventional military solutions were either inadequate or would cause unacceptable collateral damage." The holographic displays shifted to show images of Jake in military gear that looked far more advanced than anything the other species had seen. The pictures showed him leading operations that appeared to blend high technology with tactics that seemed almost supernatural in their precision and effectiveness. "The 3 ships you currently have in orbit around this station, War Commander, are indeed impressive vessels," Jake said, gesturing toward displays that now showed detailed technical specifications of the Zephyrian fleet. 40,000 crew members total, enough firepower to reduce a planetary surface to slag, armor thick enough to withstand most known weapons. Vextal's eyes widened as he realized the human had somehow obtained complete technical readouts of ships that were supposed to be protected by the most advanced security systems his species could devise. "Unfortunately for your tactical position," Jake continued conversationally, "those ships have 17 critical vulnerabilities that could be exploited by a single operative with the right equipment and training." The War Commander looked at his military advisor, who was staring at his own scanning equipment with an expression of complete bewilderment. Their sensors were showing nothing unusual about the humans, yet somehow the ambassador had accessed their most classified military information without triggering any alarms. Ben activated something on his uniform, and suddenly the chamber filled with tactical overlays showing the position of every delegate, potential weapons, escape routes, threat assessments, and what appeared to be real-time analysis of everyone's stress levels and probable reactions. "Human, diplomatic protocol requires us to maintain complete situational awareness at all times," Ben explained to the stunned aliens. "We prefer negotiation, but we prepare for every possible alternative outcome." Jake's expression remained pleasant and diplomatic, but now every alien in the room could see the predator that had always been lurking beneath the surface. The patient diplomat was still there, but he had been revealed as something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Jake rolled his shoulders again, and the mechanical whirring sound became more pronounced. Several of the alien delegates flinched at the noise, suddenly understanding that the sound was not coming from any normal biological structure. Whatever enhancements the human carried were far more extensive than they had initially realized. "The Galactic Council has always wondered about certain aspects of human expansion," Jake said, beginning to pace around the conference table again. His movement was different now, more predatory and controlled. "You have all noted that human colonies remain remarkably peaceful despite being surrounded by aggressive species. You have observed that we rarely engage in open warfare, even when attacked." Vexatal found himself unconsciously tracking Jake's movement, his warrior instincts telling him to keep the dangerous human in sight at all times. The war commander's earlier confidence had completely evaporated, replaced by the growing realization that he had made a potentially fatal error in judgment. The answer to your questions is quite simple, Jake continued, his voice carrying that same unsettling calm. We do not need to fight wars because we end conflicts before they have a chance to develop into full-scale military operations. Lisa activated additional controls on her collar device, and the holographic displays around the room expanded to show detailed files on dozens of different species and conflicts. Ambassador Morrison has personally intervened in 43 situations that could have escalated into interstellar wars, she said, her tone as matter-of-fact as if she were reading a grocery list. 38 of those interventions were resolved through successful diplomatic negotiation, Ben added, his equipment continuing to scan and analyze every being in the chamber. The remaining 5 required alternative resolution methods. Counselor, Ethak's serpentine form coiled nervously as he asked the question that every delegate was thinking. What exactly do you mean by alternative resolution methods? Jake stopped pacing and turned to face the assembled aliens directly. His smile had returned, but now it carried implications that made even the largest delegates want to find somewhere else to be. Direct intervention, Jake replied simply. When diplomatic solutions prove impossible, human ambassadors are authorized and equipped to resolve conflicts through more immediate means. The holographic displays shifted to show star charts marking various systems throughout the galaxy. Red markers indicated locations where conflicts had occurred, while green markers showed the current status of those same regions. The Krek Syndicate learned about human capabilities 3 years ago, Jake said, pointing to one of the red markers. They decided to test human resolve by capturing one of our merchant vessels and holding the crew for ransom. They demanded territorial concessions and tribute payments. Ben manipulated the display to show detailed information about the Krek's incident. 48 hours after the merchant vessel was captured, every Krek's military installation in 3 star systems suffered simultaneous critical failures. Their command ships lost power, their orbital defenses went offline, and their communication networks experienced total collapse. No shots were fired, Lisa added. No Krek's personnel were harmed, but their entire military infrastructure simply stopped working. Jake nodded approvingly at his team's presentation. The Krek's leadership received a simple message: release our people immediately, or discover what happens when human patience runs out completely. They chose wisely. Vextal's military advisor leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. How is such a thing possible? The Kreks had advanced defensive systems. Advanced by galactic standards, Jake corrected gently. Human technology tends to be somewhat more sophisticated than what most species consider state-of-the-art. We prefer not to advertise our capabilities unless absolutely necessary. The displays changed again, showing another incident marked on the star charts. The Altarian Empire presented a different kind of problem, Jake continued. They decided that human colonists would make excellent slaves and launched raids against 4 of our agricultural worlds. Ben pulled up footage of the aftermath, showing Altarian slave ships floating dead in space while human rescue vessels evacuated their captured colonists. The Altarian fleet suffered complete system failures while approaching human space. Their ships remained intact, their crews were unharmed, but every piece of technology on their vessels simply stopped functioning. The slave raiders found themselves drifting helplessly while human rescue teams freed every captured colonist, Lisa added. The Altarian leadership received detailed information about how their security systems had been compromised, along with specifications for defensive improvements that would prevent similar incidents in the future. Jake resumed his pacing, but now his movement seemed less threatening and more like a teacher walking in front of a classroom. The beauty of the human approach to conflict resolution is that it offers every species a clear choice. Negotiate, in good faith, and everyone benefits from peaceful cooperation. Choose aggression, and discover that human defensive capabilities are far more advanced than our preference for diplomacy might suggest. The assembled delegates were beginning to understand that they were not witnessing a threat or a boast. They were receiving an education about how galactic politics actually functioned when humans were involved. Every human colony world maintains a diplomatic corps, Jake continued. Every ambassador assigned to those colonies is a weapons system capable of defending entire star systems if necessary. Every negotiation is conducted by someone who could end the conflict permanently if peaceful resolution proves impossible. Counselor, Hithek spoke carefully, as if afraid that the wrong words might trigger some kind of response. How many species in the galaxy are aware of these capabilities? Until today, exactly 3, Jake replied. The Kreks learned through experience and chose cooperation. The Altarians discovered our abilities and decided that slavery was no longer profitable. The Vorthan Empire chose to test human resolve with more aggressive methods. The silence that followed was broken only by Vextal's reluctant question. What happened to the Vorthan Empire? Jake's expression became genuinely sad for the first time during the meeting. The Vorthans refused to believe that a peaceful species could pose any real threat to their military might. They responded to diplomatic overtures by bombarding one of our colony worlds from orbit. Ben activated new displays showing the former Vorthan territory, now marked with completely different political boundaries. The Vorthan Empire ceased to exist as a political entity within 72 hours of that bombardment. Individual Vorthan worlds were offered the choice of independence or joining the human colonial administration. Most chose independence and are now thriving under new governments that prioritize peaceful development. The former imperial leadership was relocated to comfortable exile on worlds suited to their biological needs, Lisa added. They receive generous pensions and are free to live normal lives as long as they avoid involvement in political or military activities. Jake returned to his seat, his posture relaxing slightly as the immediate tension in the room began to decrease. The human philosophy of conflict resolution is based on a simple principle. Peace is always preferable to war, but only when that peace is backed by the absolute certainty of victory if peaceful options are rejected. Vextal looked around the chamber at the other delegates, all of whom were staring at him with expressions ranging from fascination to horror. He realized that his casual act of violence had just revealed one of the galaxy's most closely guarded secrets and had potentially put his entire species in danger. We have built a civilization where our diplomats are our weapons and our weapons prefer to negotiate, Jake concluded. Every human ambassador you will ever meet is someone capable of ending interstellar conflicts single-handedly, but we would much rather find solutions that benefit everyone involved. The war commander was beginning to understand that striking a human diplomat was not just an insult or a breach of protocol. It was essentially a declaration that peaceful solutions were no longer acceptable, and that other methods of resolution were now under consideration. The room fell silent again, as the implications of this revelation settled over the assembled delegates. The galaxy's political landscape had just shifted in ways that none of them had imagined possible. Vextal struggled to maintain his composure as the weight of Jake's revelation settled over the conference chamber. His warrior pride demanded that he challenge these claims, even as his survival instincts screamed warnings about the danger he now faced. The war commander's 6 arms flexed unconsciously as he fought between his nature and his growing understanding of the situation. You expect us to believe that one human, even with advanced technology, could pose a genuine threat to an entire Zephyrian battle fleet? Vextal asked, his voice carrying less conviction than he intended. Our ships carry 40,000 warriors. Our weapons can reduce planets to ash. Our armor has never been penetrated by any known weapon. Jake exchanged a look with Lisa and Ben that seemed to carry entire conversations in the space of a heartbeat. All 3 humans wore expressions that the watching aliens found deeply unsettling. It was the look of professionals who had heard similar challenges many times before. War Commander, I believe I should clarify something important about my specific background, Jake said, settling back into his chair with a casual ease that somehow made him appear more dangerous rather than less. When I mentioned that I was retired Special Forces, I may not have been entirely clear about what kind of Special Forces unit I served with. He touched a different control on his wrist device, and the holographic displays around the chamber shifted to show new information. Technical specifications, Operational records and classified military documents scrolled through the air in patterns that hurt to look at directly. I was part of the Human Strategic Response Division, Specialist, Operations Branch. Jake continued, his voice taking on the tone of someone reciting facts from a textbook. We were tasked with handling what our command structure classified as impossible problems. Situations where conventional military responses were either inadequate or would result in unacceptable collateral damage. The holographic displays changed to show images of Jake in military gear that looked nothing like standard human equipment. The technology appeared to blend seamlessly with his body, creating a fusion of man and machine that defied easy categorization. The operational footage showed him moving through environments that should have been lethal to any living being. Our specialty was strategic asset neutralization, Ben added, his own equipment continuing to scan and analyze every being in the chamber. Single operative missions designed to resolve large-scale conflicts without the need for fleet actions or planetary bombardments. Lisa activated additional displays that showed detailed technical specifications of various alien military systems. The 3 Zephyrian ships currently orbiting this station are impressive examples of your species' engineering capabilities, she said in a conversational tone that made the information sound routine rather than threatening. Jake gestured toward the displays, and the specifications became even more detailed. Complete deck plans, crew arrangements, weapon systems, defensive capabilities, and what appeared to be real-time status reports from inside the ships themselves filled the air around them. Your flagship, the Crimson Talon, carries 15,000 crew members and enough firepower to sterilize a continent, Jake said, reading from the displays as if he were commenting on the weather. The escort vessels Bloodstriker and Ironclaw are somewhat smaller but equally impressive in their own ways. Vextal stared at the displays in growing horror. The information being shown was not just accurate, it was current. Somehow the human had gained access to real-time data from ships that were supposed to be protected by the most advanced security systems the Zephyrian Empire could create. How is this possible? The war commander demanded, his voice cracking slightly. Our ships are shielded against all known scanning methods. Our security protocols are updated daily. No alien technology should be able to penetrate our defenses. Jake's smile returned, carrying implications that made several of the watching delegates take involuntary steps backward. War Commander, you are making the same mistake that many species have made when dealing with humans. You assume that our technology operates according to the same principles as your own. Ben manipulated the displays to show comparative technology analyses. Side-by-side comparisons revealed that human systems operated on fundamentally different principles than anything else in the known galaxy. Where other species relied on brute force approaches, human technology appeared to work through elegant solutions that bypassed problems rather than overwhelming them. Human military technology is based on what we call adaptive integration, Jake explained, standing up and walking toward the displays. Rather than building bigger weapons or stronger armor, we focus on systems that can analyze and respond to any threat in real time. The displays shifted again, showing the 17 critical vulnerabilities that Jake had mentioned earlier. Each vulnerability was highlighted on the ship schematics, with detailed explanations of how they could be exploited by someone with the right knowledge and equipment. Your ships are designed to withstand attacks from weapons similar to your own, Lisa said, her fingers dancing across her control panel to highlight specific systems. They are not designed to handle someone who can convince their own computers to work against them. Jake touched another control, and suddenly, the displays showed live feeds from inside the Zephyrian ships. Crew members going about their duties unaware that their most secure systems had been completely compromised. Engineering sections, weapon control rooms, and even the command bridge were all visible in perfect detail. The beautiful thing about advanced computer systems, Jake said conversationally, is that they all want to be helpful. They want to share information and coordinate activities. All you need to know is how to ask them politely. Vextal watched in stunned silence as the displays showed human signals being transmitted directly to his ships. The signals appeared to be routine maintenance updates, but the war commander could see that they were actually commands that gave Jake complete control over every system on all 3 vessels. At this moment, Jake continued, his voice never losing its pleasant diplomatic tone. "I have administrative access to every computer system on your ships. I can control life support, artificial gravity, weapon systems, engines, and communications. I can lock doors, change environmental settings, or simply turn everything off and leave your crews floating helplessly in space." Ben activated his own displays, showing tactical projections of what would happen if the Zephyrian ship suddenly lost all power while in orbit around the station. The scenarios were not encouraging for the survival of the 40,000 crew members currently aboard those vessels. "The choice is entirely yours, War Commander," Jake said, returning to his seat and folding his hands calmly in his lap. "We can continue our diplomatic negotiations and find a solution that benefits everyone involved. Or we can explore alternative methods of conflict resolution." The silence in the chamber was absolute. Every alien delegate present understood that they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. A single human diplomat had just demonstrated the ability to neutralize an entire battle fleet without firing a shot or making any obvious aggressive moves. "I want to be very clear about something," Jake added, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "I have no desire to harm anyone in this room or on those ships. Violence is wasteful and creates problems that are much harder to solve than the original conflicts. But I want everyone to understand exactly what the alternatives are if peaceful resolution becomes impossible." Vexatal looked around the chamber at the other delegates, seeing his own shock and fear reflected in their expressions. The casual act of striking a human diplomat had just revealed capabilities that changed everything about how the galaxy would need to approach conflicts involving human interests. The war commander was beginning to understand that he had not insulted a weak negotiator. He had attacked someone who could have ended his entire civilization at any moment, but had chosen to offer peace instead. The implications of that realization were staggering. The silence in the conference chamber stretched for what felt like an eternity. Every alien delegate stood frozen, watching Vextal struggle with the impossible situation he had created for himself and his entire species. The war commander's 6 arms trembled slightly as the full weight of his mistake became clear. Finally, Counselor Ithak found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "How many species in the galaxy know the complete truth about human diplomatic capabilities?" Jake deactivated the holographic displays showing the compromised Zephyrian ships, but the implications of what everyone had just witnessed continued to hang in the air like smoke from a fire. "Until this moment, exactly 3 species possessed this knowledge," he replied calmly. "Each of them learned through direct experience rather than demonstration." Ben closed his tactical overlays and allowed his equipment to return to passive scanning mode. "The Krek Syndicate discovered our capabilities when they decided to test human resolve through piracy and kidnapping. They learned that human merchant protection extends far beyond what conventional military thinking would suggest." Lisa added her own information to the explanation. "The Altarian Empire found out when they attempted to establish a slave trade using human colonists as their primary resource. They discovered that human defensive systems can reach across interstellar distances to protect our people." "And the Vorthan Empire?" asked another delegate, though everyone in the room already suspected what the answer would be. Jake's expression became genuinely sorrowful. "The Vorthans refused to believe that any peaceful species could pose a real threat to their military supremacy. They responded to diplomatic overtures by launching orbital bombardments against civilian targets on one of our colony worlds." The holographic displays activated one final time, showing star charts that marked the former extent of Vorthan space. The political boundaries had been completely redrawn, with dozens of independent worlds where once a single empire had dominated an entire sector. "The Vorthan Empire ceased to exist 72 hours after that bombardment," Ben said matter-of-factly. "Not through conquest or destruction, but through what we call systematic political dissolution. Every Vorthan world was given the choice between independence and integration into human colonial administration. Most chose independence," Lisa continued. "They are now thriving democracies with economies based on peaceful trade rather than military expansion. The former imperial leadership lives comfortably in exile on worlds suited to their needs." Jake stood up slowly, his movement causing every alien in the room to tense reflexively. The human approach to galactic politics is based on a simple principle, War Commander. We offer genuine partnership to anyone willing to work toward mutual benefit, but we also ensure that the alternative to cooperation is so overwhelmingly disadvantageous that rational beings choose peace. Vexatal finally found his voice, though it lacked all the arrogance and aggression it had carried at the beginning of the meeting. What you are describing is not diplomacy. It is conquest through intimidation. No, Jake replied firmly. Conquest implies taking something that belongs to someone else. We have never claimed territory that was not legitimately ours. We have never demanded tribute or submission from other species. We simply make it clear that attacking human interest will result in consequences that far outweigh any possible benefits. He returned to his seat and pulled out his tablet, calling up the original negotiation documents as if the dramatic revelations of the past hour had been nothing more than a minor interruption. The beauty of our system is that it gives everyone a genuine choice. Work with us to find solutions that benefit all parties, or discover what happens when peaceful options are exhausted. The other delegates began to understand that they were not witnessing the aftermath of a threat or demonstration of power. They were seeing the conclusion of an educational process that had fundamentally changed their understanding of how galactic politics actually functioned. Every human colony world maintains a diplomatic corps, Jake continued, scrolling through his negotiation files. Every ambassador assigned to those worlds is capable of defending entire star systems if necessary. Every diplomatic meeting is conducted by someone who could resolve conflicts through alternative means if negotiation fails. Ben packed away his scanning equipment with efficient movements that showed years of practice. The galaxy has been operating under human protection for decades without realizing it. Every major conflict that could have escalated into interstellar war has been quietly resolved before reaching that point. Lisa deactivated her communication systems and returned her collar device to passive mode. Peace has been maintained not through weakness or luck, but through the knowledge that attacking human interests triggers responses that make victory impossible and survival unlikely. Vextal looked around the chamber at the other delegates, seeing his own shock and newfound understanding reflected in their faces. The casual act of striking a human diplomat had revealed one of the most closely guarded secrets in galactic history. "I must apologize for my actions, Ambassador Morrison," Vextal said slowly, each word carefully chosen. "I clearly misunderstood the nature of our relationship and the consequences of aggressive behavior toward human representatives." Jake nodded graciously, his demeanor returning to the pleasant diplomatic persona he had worn at the beginning of the meeting. "Apology accepted. War Commander, these misunderstandings are exactly why we prefer to resolve conflicts through open communication rather than allowing them to escalate unnecessarily." He activated his tablet and pulled up the territorial agreements they had been discussing before the incident. "Now, regarding the mining rights and colonial boundaries we were negotiating, I believe we can find arrangements that serve everyone's interests." The negotiation resumed, but the atmosphere in the chamber had changed completely. Where before there had been political maneuvering and veiled threats, now there was genuine cooperation from delegates who understood the true nature of the choices they faced. By the end of the day, agreements had been reached that were more favorable to human interests than Jake had originally hoped to achieve. The Zephyrians agreed to modified territorial boundaries that provided them with expansion opportunities, while guaranteeing the security of human colonies. Trade agreements were established that would benefit both species economically. As the various delegations prepared to depart, Vextal approached Jake one final time. "Ambassador Morrison, may I ask how many humans like you are currently serving in diplomatic positions throughout the galaxy?" Jake considered the question carefully before answering. "Every human world maintains diplomatic representation, War Commander. Every human colony has peaceful relationships with its neighbors. I would suggest that you draw your own conclusions from those facts." As the aliens filed out of the chamber, Jake turned to Lisa and Ben with a slight smile. "Well, that could have gone significantly worse. Lisa shook her head with amusement. Only you could turn a diplomatic incident into a strategic advantage for our entire species. Ben was already composing his report for command. The intelligence value of today's revelation is immense. We just gave the entire galaxy a masterclass in deterrence theory without firing a single shot. Jake packed his materials with the same methodical care he had shown throughout his career. The best weapons are the ones you never have to use, but sometimes you need to let people know they exist. Outside the conference chamber, word of the day's events was already spreading through the diplomatic community. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology, their numbers, or their determination. It was their ability to make peace so attractive that war became unthinkable, backed by individuals capable of making war, impossible for those who chose unwisely. The age of open human influence in galactic politics had begun, not through conquest or intimidation, but through the simple revelation that their diplomats had always been their ultimate expression of power.